The coffee turned cold in my cup as my mother's voice cut through the quiet kitchen, sharp and deliberate. "We need you out by the end of the month, Bryn," she said, not looking at me while my 3-year-old daughter Ivy colored at the table. "This house isn't a charity shelter for bad decisions. You're 28 years old with a child and no husband. Your failure to get your life together isn't our responsibility anymore." The room went silent except for Ivy's crayon scratching against paper. My father sat beside my mother, arms crossed, staring at his newspaper. I felt the blood drain from my face, my hands going numb around the mug. I'd lived here 6 months since my divorce, working full-time as a financial analyst while caring for Ivy, paying $800 monthly rent. "Mom," I said quietly, "I pay rent. I clean, cook, stay out of your way. What changed?" She finally looked at me, her eyes cold and flat. "What changed is we're tired of supporting your mistakes. You have until May 31st. 3 weeks. My name is Bryn Foster. I'm not a charity case. I have a finance degree and earn $72,000 annually. But that April morning, I was just a single mother being evicted by her own parents. Let me explain how I ended up here. I married young at 23 to Troy, who turned out to be controlling and financially abusive. After 4 years and 1 daughter, I filed for divorce in September 2023. It finalized in November, and I moved into my parents' house temporarily while saving for my own place. I paid rent consistently, contributed to groceries, kept everything immaculate. My parents, Douglas and Patricia Hamilton, had always been difficult, critical, cold, concerned with appearances over substance, but I assumed they'd help during crisis. That assumption was about to cost me everything. The eviction notice came April 10th, 2024. By April 11th, I was apartment hunting, feeling panic rise. 3 weeks wasn't much time. What made this stranger was timing. My grandmother, Cecilia Hamilton, had died in February at age 86. She'd been sharp, kind in ways my parents never were. Before she died, she'd whispered something in the hospital. "Make sure you get what's yours, Bryn. Don't let them take it. Check everything." I'd assumed she meant the divorce settlement. Now, holding this eviction notice, those words felt heavier. That evening, while my parents were out and Ivy was asleep, I went to my father's home office. I'd cleaned this room dozens of times but never looked closely at documents on his desk. Now I did. There, in a folder labeled Estate Mother, were documents that made everything click into place with cold clarity. Cecilia's will, dated January 2024, 1 month before her death. I read it carefully, hands shaking. She'd left her house, worth approximately $680,000, to me and Ivy in a trust. She'd left $150,000 in investment accounts for Ivy's education. Her retirement accounts, worth $340,000, were designated to me for financial independence and security. Total estate value, $1.22 million. Total to me and Ivy, $1.17 million. Total to my father, $50,000. I stared at the documents, processing. My grandmother had left me her house, her retirement savings, the majority of her estate. The will was valid, properly executed, filed with the court in February. My father knew, my mother knew, and they were evicting me 3 weeks before I was scheduled to take possession of Cecilia's house on May 31st. This wasn't about me being a burden. This was about preventing me from claiming my inheritance. I photographed every page with trembling hands. If they could evict me and make me desperate enough, I might sell my inheritance to them at a discount or sign it over for temporary housing. They were betting on my vulnerability as a single mother with a toddler. But they'd miscalculated. They assumed I wouldn't discover the will before they executed their plan. And they assumed I didn't know how to protect assets, even though estate protection is literally what I do professionally. I kept working that week, kept paying rent, acting like nothing changed. But every evening after Ivy slept, I researched. I found the estate attorney who'd handled Cecilia's will, Victoria Wells, and called her office. "Miss Wells, I'm Bryn Foster, Cecilia Hamilton's granddaughter and beneficiary. I need a consultation about the estate settlement." Victoria's voice was warm and professional. "Miss Foster, I've been trying to reach you for 2 months. Your father said you were traveling and couldn't be reached. I have documents requiring your signature, and we're approaching the deadline for the house transfer. Can you come tomorrow?" Tomorrow was Saturday. "Yes," I said. 10 a.m. Victoria's downtown Portland office spoke of competence and discretion. She was maybe 55, silver hair, sharp eyes. She studied me carefully when I arrived with Ivy. "Miss Foster, I'm relieved to finally meet you. Your father has been difficult about facilitating communication." She pulled out a thick folder. "Your grandmother left very specific instructions, particularly regarding your inheritance. She was concerned certain family members might interfere with her wishes." I felt vindication and grief mix. Cecilia had known, she'd anticipated this. Victoria continued. "The house at 2847 Maple Street transfers to you May 31st. I've sent multiple notifications to your father's address, your residence. He claimed you never received them." I showed her photos of the will. "I found these in my father's office 2 days ago. I've lived at his house since November, paying $800 monthly rent. He and my mother served me an eviction notice April 10th, giving me until May 31st to leave. They never mentioned the inheritance." Victoria's expression hardened. "That's not just unethical. That's potential fraud and breach of fiduciary duty if your father was interfering with estate administration." Victoria explained everything Cecilia left me. The house was in a trust designed to protect it from creditors, divorce claims, and family interference. Cecilia's exact words. The $150,000 education fund for Ivy was also protected. The $340,000 retirement account had transferred to an inherited IRA in my name in February, but I'd never been notified because correspondence went to my father's address, and he never forwarded it. "Your father had no legal right to withhold this information," Victoria said. "As executor, he had fiduciary duty to notify all beneficiaries promptly. By concealing your inheritance while evicting you, he's violated those duties spectacularly." I thought about the timing. They'd waited until mid-April, giving me exactly 3 weeks. Not enough time to secure housing comfortably, but enough to avoid no-notice claims. They'd calculated I'd be desperate and vulnerable by late May. What are my options? Victoria smiled, and it wasn't kind. "We file a complaint with probate court documenting your father's interference. We also accelerate the house transfer immediately since you're the rightful owner, currently paying rent to people evicting you from property you'll own in 3 weeks." Victoria worked fast. By Monday, April 15th, she'd filed emergency motions requesting immediate house transfer and documenting my father's failure to notify me. She'd sent formal notification to my parents informing them I was aware of the inheritance and taking possession immediately. I didn't tell my parents. I kept acting desperate, searching apartments, asking about move-out dates, playing the role perfectly. But now I was searching strategically, not desperately. I needed temporary housing for 2 weeks between their eviction date and taking possession of my house. My mother noticed me looking at rentals that week and smiled with satisfaction. "It's hard out there, isn't it? Maybe you'll learn to make better decisions." I looked at this woman who'd given birth to me, but seemed incapable of basic maternal protection. "I'm learning a lot," I said truthfully, "about what really matters and who people really are." She missed the warning completely. On April 18th, my father received Victoria's formal notification. I was in the kitchen when he opened it. I watched his face go white, then red, then mottled purple. "Bryn," he said, voice tight and controlled, "did you contact Cecilia's estate attorney?" I kept my voice calm. Yes, she'd been trying to reach me for 2 months, but her messages never made it to me, even though they were sent here. Strange, isn't it? My mother appeared in the doorway, expression sharp. "What messages?" I looked at them both. "The messages about the house Cecilia left me, the retirement accounts, the education trust for Ivy, the entire inheritance you forgot to mention while evicting me." The silence was dense. My father's jaw clenched. "That wasn't finalized yet. You weren't supposed to know until after the estate settled." "I wasn't supposed to know while you were making me homeless?" I asked. "Or was that the point? Make me desperate enough to sell you the house at a discount?" My mother's face flushed. "That house should be your father's. Cecilia was his mother. You're being selfish, taking resources from your own father." The audacity was breathtaking. "The house is mine because Cecilia wanted me to have it. She made that choice deliberately and legally. She left Dad $50,000 instead." I paused. And you're still evicting me in 2 weeks, knowing I'll own property in 3? Neither had a good response, so they retreated into cold silence. The house became tense and miserable, but I endured it. I'd found a short-term rental, a furnished apartment for 2 weeks in late May, $900 total. My parents thought I was scrambling desperately. I was counting down until I owned a $680,000 house free and clear. On April 25th, Victoria called with news. The probate court accelerated the house transfer. Given your father's interference and you being evicted despite being the legal heir, the judge wants quick resolution. Transfer is now May 15th instead of May 31st. I felt something loosen in my chest. May 15th. I can do that. There's more, Victoria said. The court is investigating your father's estate handling. Concealing inheritance while evicting creates appearance of undue influence and potential fraud. He may face removal as executor and possible legal penalties. I thought about my parents' cold dismissal, their calculated timing, their assumption I'd be too vulnerable to fight back. Good, I said quietly. He should face consequences. I moved out May 14th, one day before taking possession. My parents watched with barely concealed satisfaction as I packed. My mother even helped carry boxes, expression smug. This is what happens when you make poor choices. Maybe now you'll learn responsibility. I looked at her carefully. I'm learning exactly who is responsible for what. That lesson is very clear. She missed the meaning entirely. The next day, May 15th, I met Victoria at Cecilia's house, my house, at 10 a.m. The house was beautiful. 1950s craftsman, with original hardwood floors, updated kitchen, 3 bedrooms, fenced backyard, perfect for Ivy. It was in a neighborhood where houses sold for $650,000 to $750,000, and it was mine, free and clear, no mortgage. Victoria handed me the keys and deed. Congratulations, Miss Foster. You're now the legal owner of 2847 Maple Street, plus trustee of approximately $490,000 in protected accounts. I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness but overwhelming gratitude for a grandmother who'd protected me even after death. Thank you, Victoria, for everything. She smiled. Thanks, Cecilia. She told me, some people will try to take what's Bryn's. Make sure they can't. I'm honoring that instruction. That weekend I moved from the short-term rental into my house. Ivy loved her new room. The backyard, the neighborhood park 2 blocks away. I loved the security, the stability, knowing no one could evict us from property we owned outright. On May 18th, I received a text from my mother. We need to talk about Cecilia's house. Your father should have that property. We can work out a fair arrangement. I called Victoria. My parents are pressuring me about the house. What are my legal obligations? Absolutely none, Victoria said firmly. The estate is settled, property transferred, and you owe them nothing. Given your father's interference, you'd be well within rights to cut off all contact. That evening, I responded, the house is mine, legally and permanently. Cecilia made that choice deliberately. There's nothing to discuss. My mother called immediately, voice sharp. Bryn, be reasonable. That house is worth over $500,000. Your father is her son. You can't just take his inheritance. I kept my voice calm and cold. Cecilia left Dad $50,000, which he received. She left me the house because that's what she wanted. This isn't negotiable. The calls and texts continued, escalating from requests to demands to threats. My father left a voicemail May 20th. If you don't agree to sell me that house at a fair price, you'll regret this. Family doesn't treat family this way. I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Victoria. On May 23rd, my parents showed up unannounced. I watched through the window as they rang the doorbell repeatedly. I didn't answer. Instead, I called the non-emergency police line. There are people at my door I've asked not to contact me. They're refusing to leave. An officer arrived within 10 minutes. I watched from inside as my parents explained they were just trying to talk to their daughter about family matters. The officer was polite but firm. She's asked you to leave her property. If you don't leave now, she can press trespassing charges. They left, but my mother shouted, "You're stealing from your father. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are." I stood at the window holding Ivy, who asked, "Why is Grandma yelling?" "Because sometimes people get angry when they don't get what they want," I said, "even when what they want isn't theirs." The harassment continued through early June. Each message was documented and forwarded to Victoria. On June 8th, my father's strategy shifted. He filed a legal challenge to Cecilia's will, claiming she'd lacked mental capacity and that I'd exercised undue influence to steal his inheritance. The claim was absurd. Cecilia had been mentally sharp until her final week. But it was serious because will contests can tie up estates for years. Victoria was unsurprised. This is desperate. He knows he's lost but wants to make it painful. He's hoping you'll settle to avoid legal fees and stress. What do? Victoria's response was immediate. We defend the will aggressively, and we file counterclaims for breach of fiduciary duty, interference with estate administration, and harassment post-settlement. We make this cost him more than it could ever gain him. The legal battle stretched through summer 2024. My father's attorney argued Cecilia had been confused and that leaving the bulk of her estate to a granddaughter was proof of diminished capacity. My attorney countered with medical records showing Cecilia's competence, testimony from doctors, and documentation of her discussing estate plans with her attorney multiple times over months. The turning point came in August when Victoria deposed my father under oath. The transcript was damning. Mr. Hamilton, you received estate documents in February indicating your daughter would inherit property? Yes. You were residing with your daughter then? She was residing with me in a rental arrangement. Did you inform her about the inheritance? I didn't think it was finalized, but you knew about it? Yes. On April 10th, you served her with eviction notice requiring her to leave by May 31st. We needed our space back. The same day her inheritance property was scheduled to transfer? That was coincidental. Did it occur to you that evicting your daughter 3 weeks before she inherited a house might appear calculated? My father's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The transcript made my father look exactly like what he was, someone who'd tried to manipulate his daughter's inheritance for his own benefit. In September, the probate court ruled. Cecilia's will was upheld as valid. My father's challenge was dismissed with prejudice, and critically, my father was removed as executor and ordered to pay $45,000 in legal fees for the frivolous contest and breach of fiduciary duties. The $45,000 in legal fees devastated my parents' finances. They'd borrowed heavily to fund the will contest, assuming they'd win and recover the house. Instead, they lost everything and owed money they didn't have. By October 2024, they were struggling. My mother called October 15th, voice strained. Bryn, we need help. The legal fees are due, and we don't have the money. Can you loan us something from your inheritance? We're family. I sat in my kitchen listening to this woman ask for money after months of harassment. Mom, you evicted me. You tried to steal my inheritance. You challenged Cecilia's will. And now you want me to give you money? We're desperate, she said, actual fear in her voice. The bank is threatening foreclosure. We could lose everything. Like you tried to make me lose everything? I asked quietly. I was a single mother with a toddler, and you made me homeless while hiding a $1.17 million inheritance. You calculated I'd be too vulnerable to fight back. You were wrong. I paused. I'm not loaning you money. You taught me that when you evicted me. She hung up. In November, their house went into foreclosure. I heard about their situation through family members who called asking me to be the bigger person. I declined every request. Some called me cruel. One aunt told me I was destroying the family over money. I told her the truth. I'm protecting my daughter's future from people who tried to steal it. That's not cruelty. That's responsibility. In January 2025, my parents moved into a small rental apartment, having lost their house. My father's credit was destroyed. My mother's health declined from stress. They'd gone from comfortable homeowners to struggling renters in 9 months. Through it all, I felt no guilt. I felt clarity. They'd made every choice that led to this outcome. They'd chosen to hide my inheritance, evict me, contest the will, and borrow money for a legal battle they couldn't afford. Every consequence was the direct result of their decisions. In February 2025, exactly 1 year after Cecilia died, I received a letter from Victoria. Bryn, I wanted to update you on a conversation with your grandmother before she passed. She told me she'd watched your father become increasingly greedy and worried he'd try to control your inheritance. That's why she structured everything in trusts. She said, Bryn sacrificed her 20s to a bad marriage. I want her 30s to be secure and free. I cried reading that letter, grieving the grandmother who'd loved me enough to protect me from my own father. Cecilia had seen clearly what I'd been too close to see, that my parents valued money over their daughter and would sacrifice me for financial gain. She'd built walls around my inheritance they couldn't breach, and those walls had saved me. By spring 2025, my life looked completely different. I lived in a beautiful house with my daughter, mortgage-free. I had $340,000 in retirement accounts. I had $150,000 in an education trust, ensuring Ivy would never face student debt. I was financially independent in ways most people my age couldn't imagine. I also had clarity about family. My parents had shown me who they were when they thought I was vulnerable. They'd failed because I was stronger and smarter than they assumed, and because Cecilia had given me tools they couldn't take. I stayed no contact with my parents through 2025. Some relatives criticized this. Others understood. I didn't need approval. One person who understood was Aunt Sylvia, my father's younger sister. She'd always been kind but distant. In March 2025, she reached out, asking to meet for coffee. Sylvia got straight to the point. I need to tell you something about your father and Cecilia's estate. She pulled out a folder. This is correspondence between Douglas and my mother from 2023, before she died. He was pressuring her to change her will, to leave him the house and majority of the estate. He told her you were financially irresponsible because of your divorce and that giving you assets would be wasting them on bad decisions. I felt cold clarity settle over me. Sylvia continued. Cecilia refused. She told him she'd watched you survive a difficult marriage, work full-time while caring for Ivy, and handle finances better than most adults twice your age. She said if anyone was financially irresponsible, it was Douglas for borrowing beyond his means to maintain appearances. Sylvia slid the folder to me. She updated her will specifically to protect you from him. She told me, Douglas will try to take what I leave Bryn. Make sure he can't. That's why she used trusts. That's why she made Victoria executor instead of Douglas initially, until he convinced her it would hurt his feelings. She regretted that choice and was planning to change executors when she got sick. The folder contained emails, letters, notes documenting everything. My father's pressure campaign, Cecilia's resistance, her growing clarity that her son valued inheritance over family. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because Douglas is telling everyone you stole his inheritance through manipulation. He's rewriting history to make himself the victim. I wanted you to have proof that Cecilia made her choices deliberately, with full knowledge of who her son really was. She paused. And because I'm sorry, I should have warned you. I knew he'd try something when the will was read. I took the folder. Thank you for being honest. Sylvia nodded. Cecilia was right about everything. She protected you perfectly. I just wish she'd asked the question that might have changed things before she died. What question? She told me in the hospital, days before she passed. I should have asked Douglas directly if he'd do the right thing by Bryn, but I already knew the answer, and that broke my heart. Sylvia's eyes filled with tears. She'd already lost faith in her son. That's why she protected you so thoroughly. She knew he'd fail you, and she made sure you'd survive anyway. Armed with Sylvia's documentation, I finally had the full picture. My parents hadn't just passively concealed my inheritance. They'd actively pressured Cecilia to disinherit me, and when that failed, they'd tried to make me desperate enough to sell cheaply. It was systematic, calculated, completely intentional. In April 2025, my parents made one final attempt. My mother sent a long email describing their financial struggles, health problems, and regret at how things had deteriorated. The email concluded, "We're your parents, Bryn. Doesn't that mean anything? Can't we start over?" I showed the email to my therapist. What do you feel reading this? Nothing, I said honestly. They evicted me knowing I'd inherit property. They tried to steal my daughter's future. They spent a year harassing me. And now they want to start over because they're struggling? They had a chance to start over every day for the past year. They chose conflict. My therapist nodded. You're not obligated to forgive people who show no genuine remorse, only regret at consequences. I deleted the email without responding. In May 2025, exactly 1 year after taking possession, I hosted a small party. Ivy played in the backyard. Sylvia brought old photos of Cecilia. It was simple, peaceful, entirely mine. Standing in that backyard, watching Ivy play in the space Cecilia had secured for us, I felt something shift from grief to gratitude. My grandmother had given me more than money or property. She'd given me proof that I was worth protecting, worth investing in, worth choosing. One detail brought particular satisfaction. Because my inheritance was in protected trusts, my ex-husband Troy couldn't touch any of it during our divorce settlement. Cecilia had structured everything to protect assets from creditors, divorce claims, and family interference. She'd anticipated every threat and neutralized it before it could harm me. The house appreciated significantly in its first year. By May 2025, the property was worth approximately $720,000. My retirement accounts grew to $368,000. Ivy's education trust reached $164,000. Total net worth? Over $1.25 million at age 29, entirely protected. I also started a blog about financial literacy for single mothers, sharing strategies for protecting assets, understanding estate planning, recognizing financial manipulation. The blog wasn't about revenge, it was about education. But knowing my story helped other women recognize warning signs brought purpose to the pain. My parents' situation continued deteriorating through 2025. The rental apartment was small and poorly maintained. My father's career suffered as word spread about the will contest. My mother's health problems worsened under financial stress. They'd gone from comfortable middle-class security to struggling month to month, all because they'd gambled on stealing an inheritance and lost catastrophically. Some relatives still pressured me to reconcile, arguing family forgives family and they're suffering enough. But I'd learned an important distinction. Forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. I could forgive my parents for being flawed, damaged people while still protecting myself and Ivy from their toxicity. In August 2025, my father had a moderate heart attack requiring hospitalization. Family members called asking if I'd visit, suggesting this was a wake-up call to reconnect. I sent flowers with a card, wishing you recovery and peace. I didn't visit. My mother called from the hospital crying, "He's asking for you. Can't you put aside the past?" "Mom," I said quietly, "when I needed housing and you knew I'd inherit property, you evicted me anyway. You taught me that need doesn't obligate rescue. I'm applying that lesson now." She hung up, but calls kept coming from other relatives. I stayed firm. My father recovered, and life continued. By fall 2025, 18 months after the initial eviction, the consequences for my parents were complete and permanent. They'd lost their house to foreclosure. My father had lost his reputation. They destroyed their credit and retirement security. Their relationship with their only daughter and granddaughter was severed. All of this stemmed from a single choice in April 2024, to evict me rather than tell me about my inheritance. That choice revealed their character completely. They'd chosen greed over grandchild, money over daughter, scheme over honesty. And that choice destroyed them. Meanwhile, I'd built something real. A home for Ivy filled with security and warmth. A career I excelled at. Financial independence that couldn't be taken. And clarity about what family actually means. Not shared blood, but shared values, shared protection, shared love. Cecilia had been more of a parent to me in death than my actual parents had been in life. Her question, the one she'd asked too late to change anything but early enough to protect me, was clear. Would Douglas choose his daughter's well-being over his own greed? She'd known the answer. That's why she'd built the trusts. Today, in early 2026, I sit in my living room thinking about the journey from that April 2024 kitchen to here. Ivy is almost 5, thriving in a good school district made possible by stable housing. My career advanced. I was promoted to lead analyst in January 2026, with a salary increase to $85,000. The retirement accounts continue growing, the house continues appreciating, and Ivy's education is fully funded through age 25. I never reconciled with my parents. I don't feel guilty about that. They made their choices, and I made mine. I chose to protect what my grandmother gave me and to teach Ivy through example that you don't reward people who try to harm you, even if they're related. The greatest gift Cecilia gave me wasn't the money or the house, though those changed my life materially. The greatest gift was proving that someone saw me clearly, valued me honestly, and protected me completely. She asked the question about my father's character too late to change his behavior, but early enough to shield me from it. And that made all the difference. I am Bryn Foster. I'm 29 years old. I'm a mother, a financial analyst, and a homeowner with over $1.25 million in protected assets. I survived a divorce, homelessness engineered by my own parents, and a year-long legal battle. I won because someone loved me enough to see the danger coming and build walls that held firm. Some people say revenge is about making others suffer. I disagree. Revenge is about protecting yourself so completely those who tried to harm you destroy themselves trying to reach you. My parents didn't lose because I hurt them. They lost because they couldn't hurt me, and they broke themselves trying. That's not revenge, that's justice. The value this story brings. Sacrifice has limits. My parents assumed need would make me compliant, but Cecilia taught me that boundaries protect what matters. Greed destroys the greedy. My father's unchecked desire cost him everything. Family is chosen, not inherited. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Sylvia proved that real family stands with you and honors what you've built. Protect yourself early. Don't wait for betrayal to act. Document everything. Seek legal advice. Trust your instincts when something feels calculated. And most importantly, live deliberately, protect what matters, and never apologize for choosing yourself and your child over people who prove they'd sacrifice you for money. That's not cruelty. That's survival. That's strength. That's justice served cold and complete.